Good afternoon, friends. Yes, indeed, it is another Word of Gord coming to you from sunny afternoon in southern Ontario. At least it's sunny right now. That could change any minute. Average Folks in the Afterlife, number 42. We're continuing on with Eric Medhouse, My Life After Death, his memoir from heaven. And we'll do some comparisons a little later with Elsa Barker's Letters from the Light, done in 1913. That's well over 100 years ago. But some interesting comparisons, as you will see. Angels, spirits, and guides. Since I've been here, I've met all sorts of regular angels, guardian angels, and archangels, as well as fellow guides and other spirits. Basically, a spirit is what I am, and being a guide is what I do. Nice and straightforward. All guides are spirits, but not all spirits are guides. And angels are another kind of spirit on a different level than my friends and me. I'll try and explain as best I can. The first thing you should know about angels is that number one, they ain't got wings. Number two, they ain't got halos. The reason everyone on earth has different ideas about what angels look like is because angels, like spirits, morph into different physical and energetic forms based on how they want to be perceived. And those of you who are fans of Lorna Byrne, the Irish lady who writes a lot about angels, and they've all got wings, be aware that she's perceiving what she subconsciously wants to perceive. Now, that's not to say that people that see angels that don't have wings are doing any different. The angels will adapt to what you need to complete your belief system and facilitate your comfort zone. Myself, I don't seem to see wings very much, but when I've worked with an angel that I call the Rose Angel, healing and distance healing and different things, she seems to be a very feminine creature. And perhaps she feels that balances out my masculine sort of scholar disciple sort of approach to things. And the first time I did some work with her, I was very keen to learn and was very much, on the bended knee sort of thing. And her first response to me was throwing out her arms and saying, "Come dance with me." And it was very much like sort of ballroom dancing in midair. And me ballroom dancing? You must be kidding. But that's what it was like. So anyway, angels will, they're good at adapting. Very good. I imagine that angels appear to people a lot of the time as big human-like creatures with wings so that humans don't get all bent out of shape wondering, what the crap is this big bright ball of light hovering in front of me? They have to appear in some familiar form so that people can recognize, oh, that's my angel. She looks like us, but she glows. I feel comfortable around her. I can trust her. People also believe that angels have wings because their energy moves differently than how it does in a human body. It moves in large, sweeping movements, kind of like big-ass wings of an eagle. That gives you the picture of these really high, arched wings sweeping up and behind them. Sometimes an angel's energy moves in front of you like the wings that reach out to embrace. You see the image of them holding you with feathered wings, not arms. Then other times their energy reaches out to their sides like a big bird showing off its wingspan, and that energy shifts around the human, all around the human. They usually do that to protect a person. Angels have powerful energy. This comes in handy for the work they do. Think of one of those big machines that thresh wheat. They make the harvest easier than if one person uses his Boy Scout pocket knife to cut the stalks one by one. So if an angel comes to help you with whatever need you have, they use their abundant amount of energy to speed up what needs to be done and what needs to be given to you. That's why a lot of people will say, man, you've got an angel watching out for you when something really amazing or miraculous happens. Angels get shit done. Archangels don't incarnate into any living being. They don't need to. They're pure energy clipped right off from the source, God, if you will, and they stay really close to that infinite energy collective. That makes them very powerful. Being an archangel takes a lot of responsibility and work. Their main role is to keep the balance, and they have the power to intervene to accomplish that. Keeping the balance. Now, there's a mystical concept. Who gets to decide what the balance is? The archangels? A committee of archangels? Or various factions of archangels channeling one aspect of the divine collective? I mean, who really knows? And I'm certainly not claiming to know. But it's a very interesting concept, keeping the balance. Sounds good, but what does it really mean? They react to the free will of people, whether those people want them to or not. Balance isn't the right word, really, but it's the best I can come up with. They can swoop in and make big changes that will help with anything, like wars, the earth, and even the weather patterns. Sometimes what we consider to be devastating and wrong might actually be right for the world to experience. So archangels will intervene and create that. Yes, there are atrocities in the world. Yes, there's cruelty. Yes, there's a lot of pain. But archangels use that to help humanity see the contrast and use it to make the world a better place. In other words, they bring in harmony and chaos, depending on what will create the best balance for humanity. Guardian angels are spirits who teach, protect, and heal. They get that power because their energy is more concentrated and vibrates at higher frequencies. Most of the time, guardian angels are assigned to one human or sometimes a small group of people who need help with a career, health, family, money, relationships, and other stuff like that. They can also intervene to save lives. It's like they'll come in and say, I'm behind you. I'm helping you with your shit because you're at the point now where you can't do it yourself. But spirit guys like me just stand to the side and whisper suggestions to you. We'll give you all the insight, but we're not going to step in and do your shit for you. The everyday angel's role is to observe and come to people's aid, but not to the extent that guardian angels do. Unlike archangels and guardian angels, regular angels have to be invoked. Well, that's new to me. And they have to be invited. They have to be welcomed. You got to let them into your house. You got to let them into your belief system and surrender to them so they can assist you. They're also more powerful than regular spirits because they're closer to the source, but not as close as archangels and guardian angels are. To break it down, spirit guides are instructional. We're teachers. We can suggest but not create change in a human's life, while angels intervene when called upon. Guardian angels intervene whether you ask them or not. And archangels usually, but not always, work on a larger scale by creating whatever balance humanity needs. Well, good on you, archangels. I hear a lot of people talking about Archangel Michael when they're doing various, psychic chores, removing negative entities from people, that sort of thing. They'll say, "Oh, I called in Archangel Michael and his team, and they came with their flashing swords of light, and all that sort of thing." Angels and spirits also guide and help each other. For example, a group of angels came to me a while after I'd crossed over and counseled me about my destiny and calling as a guide, which was really cool. I think I would have figured it out on my own eventually, but it was a lot easier with their help. And I felt a lot more supported once Celia, he was the angel who sort of led the conversation. Celia, he? And the other angels explained things to me. Spirits of every kind communicate in this universal language that's based on feeling, not words. So it took me a little while to adjust to it. Emotions are a form of energy, and we're energy, so that makes sense. All of the spirits' thoughts and feelings kind of rotate around them, like a solar system nearly, and when another spirit walks up to them, they get all that information. Doesn't have to be translated either. It's like information is coded in energy. I was saying that the other day about doing retrieval work, energy bodies merge and I get information about people. That also makes sense because, like emotions, information is energy too. This is how angels, guides, and other spirits communicate with humans too. You've got to open up to our energy, and once you do, we'll never shut up. And that was a short chapter, but here's another one of equal interest. Meeting God. That's heavy. After Celia and the group of angels told me that I was destined to become a guide and help people on Earth, I remember going back to the first home I built, the Earth-like home. I sat on a couch and started to reflect on how my family was having a really hard time with my death. They were torn apart with so much grief that they couldn't glue themselves back together. My mom and dad weren't really talking, and nobody could understand everybody else's feelings. I just wanted to know why. Why did my path and separation have to create so much suffering? And that is tough for young people on the other side. They're really, 9 times out of 10, they're really enjoying themselves. And, that comes out in my own book, American in Heaven. Whether I've read that section or not, I'm not sure. But it's tough for them to be having such a blast there and to come back to the grieving family. It's rough. They have a hard time handling it. So that's when God came to me. No big aha or fireworks moment. It's more like that's when the voice inside me first connected with all that is. As humans, when you sit down at a table and talk, you use your external voice and senses to connect. But when you talk to God, you hear a voice inside and outside you. It's not like a tennis match where you bat the ball back and forth. God, Source, Universe, all that is, whatever name resonates most with you, really helped me understand that, for people, the illusion of separation on Earth was just as powerful as their extreme moments of joy. That I should connect to this and allow it to be an experience that will create the result my family needed. I was trying to understand and resolve their pain, but God told me to only embrace it and that it was good stuff and something valuable would come out of it. And God was right. Something important did come out of it. I learned that God appears to us in a form we can connect the most. A form. God in a form? Well, I dispute that one. I didn't have that classic belief system of some man on a throne, so if that image had thrown up to me, I would have thought it was bullshit. I would have preferred to see God as a hot woman, but I didn't see it that way either. God doesn't have a gender. It's not male or female, but I'm going to refer to her as she, because if I had to say, the voice I heard was more like a woman's. Very loving, very caring. I didn't see anyone walking on in saying, "Hey, what's up?" But I did see this fog. No, I don't want to call it that. It was more like textured air. It was nice that she didn't come to me looking like a human. God came to me in the form of pure light and energy, so it was kind of like, you get it, you'll understand, this is the truth. God could have shown up as really as anything, a telephone, a chair, a dog, anything I wanted her to be. But what I wanted was truth, whatever that looked like. In that meeting, I learned that God is the energy that creates and connects everything. She's like a collective consciousness that is coming from everywhere. She's all that is, and I feel a strong connection to her. In that connection, there's a voice or a way of communication that helped me to see that God knows me, understands me, feels me, and created me. Through that voice, I got the key to understanding why I became who I am now. I gained this self-aware acceptance. All my veils had been taken off. Receiving God's embrace, that heart consciousness embrace, gave me an awareness not only of the value of pain, but also the knowledge and information about my work that I couldn't gain when I was separated from the whole. See, I wouldn't ever think God is a heart consciousness at all. To me, God doesn't have any kind of human emotion at all. It's totally transcendent of that. It's not good, it's not bad, it's not happy, it's not sad, it's all that stuff. And to translate it in human terms, I believe, is maybe useful for certain areas of growth, but ultimately an illusion. Don't forget, God is the God of your enemies as well, and your political opponents and the people you just really can't stand. Um, and a lot of people have trouble with that. They want to think of, God as being the God of the people on their side. And he's not. Well, see, the whole concept of God being a being, as far as I'm concerned, is completely wrong. God is a consciousness, a creative consciousness, a huge creative consciousness that doesn't sort of keep the universe running, but is the universe running. There is no beginning or end. There is no being at the controls, some really smart whatever. No, it's constantly creative, constantly. And there never was a start and there never will be a finish. That's all human stuff. Anyway, let's hear what Eric has to say instead of listen to me jabbering on. That voice also explained to me the nature of my energetic self as a spirit, that I'm part of the wider collective energy of the universe. Not only am I part of the whole, but I also am the whole in and of itself. I'm the whole enchilada, and I'm one of its bites. Yes, Eric, right. Remember how I was explaining how time isn't really a straight line, but stacked more like a ball of yarn? That's kind of how energy works too. We're all entwined, interconnected, and overlapping because we're all made of the same stuff. You know how I like to describe God? Think about time again. Imagine that every incarnation on earth is represented by a book. I'll get to what this has to do with the description of God in a minute. All the books are stacked on top of each other. Humans have only enough conscious awareness to concentrate on one page in one book at a time. That's important because you have to have the human experience, and when you do, you have to be in the now. You can't have your head scattered in all directions, diluting the purpose of the life you're living. But all your lives are happening at the same time. All the books stacked on top of one another exist all the time, and God is the book cover for those lives that kind of envelops and holds all the pages together. The glue, the stitching, and shit like that. So it's not like you have to go too far to step into that energy. But when you do step into it, you have this awareness of all your lives and all universal knowledge. It's pretty cool. When I say universal, I'm not talking about the universe that humans live in. I mean all universes, all of reality and unreality, everything. The emotions that came over me in the presence of God were more awe-inspiring than any experience I've ever felt. It was that bring you to your knees crying that filled my heart with a sense of wonder and love. It's hard to describe because this is not something you could ever experience on earth. I felt like a small baby being held by someone who loves me unconditionally, but that feeling was magnified infinitely. On earth, that's the closest you can get to God energy, and I know I'll always want more. Well, I don't think that's the closest you can get to God energy, but certainly the images that he uses to describe it can be approached in meditation. There's no question in my mind. I've approached it. I've shown others how to do it. It's not beyond grasp. You can take the time aside from your busy life and approach it through meditation. It can be a little overwhelming, but it's also, quite exciting. Now, Elsa Barca, 1914, Letters from the Light, channeling Judge David Hatch, I think that was his name, and hearing about his time in the spirit worlds. We've read from this before, and I don't think we've read from Letter 19, The Man Who Found God, but it makes an interesting comparison. This man was, like I say, middle-aged to upper years when he passed, was a practicing theosophist, so he had a fairly detailed knowledge of the afterlife realms and the function of reincarnation before he passed. There seems to be no way in which I can better teach you about this life, so strange to you, than by telling my experiences and conversations with men and women here. I said one night long ago that I had met more saints than philosophers, and I want to tell you now about a man who seems to be a genuine saint. Yes, there are little saints and great saints, as there are little sinners and great sinners. One day I was walking on a mountaintop. I say walking, for it seemed about the same, though it takes but little energy to walk here. On the mountaintop I saw a man standing alone. He was looking out and far away, but I could not see what he was looking at. He was abstracted and communing with himself, or with some presence of which I was unaware. I waited for some time. At last, drawing a long breath, for we breathe here, he turned his eyes to me and said with a kind smile, "Can I do anything for you, brother?" I was embarrassed for a moment, feeling that I might have intruded upon some sweet communion. "If I am not too bold in asking," I said, "would you tell me what you were thinking as you stood there looking into space?" I was conscious of my presumption, but being so determined to learn what can be known, if sometimes I am too bold in making inquiries, I feel that my very earnestness may win me the forgiveness of those I question. This man had a beautiful, beardless face and young-looking eyes, but his garments were the ordinary garments of one who thinks little or nothing of his appearance. That very unconsciousness of the outer form may sometimes give it a peculiar majesty. He looked at me in silence for a moment, and then he said, "I was trying to draw near to God." "And what is God?" I asked, "and where is God?" He smiled. I never saw a smile like his as he answered, "God is everywhere. God is." "What is he?" I persisted, and again he repeated with a different emphasis, "God is." "What do you mean?" I asked. "God is. God is," he said. I do not know how his meaning was conveyed to me, perhaps by sympathy, but suddenly flashed into my mind that when he said, "God is," he expressed the completest realization of God which is possible to the spirit. And when he said, "God is," he meant me to understand that there was no being, nothing that is, except God. There must have been in my face a reflection of what I felt, for the saint then said to me, "Do you not also know that he is, and that all he is he?" Sorry for the gender thing there, but that is 100 years ago. "I am beginning to feel what you mean," I answered, "though I doubtless feel but a little of it." He smiled and made no reply, but my mind was full of questions. "When you were on earth," I said, "did you think much about God?" "Always. I thought of little else. I sought him everywhere, but seemed only at times to get flashes of consciousness as to what he really was. Sometimes when praying, for I prayed much, there would come to me suddenly the question, 'To what are you praying?' And I would answer aloud, 'To God, to God.' But though I prayed to him every day for years, only occasionally did I get a flash of that true consciousness of God. Finally, one day when I was alone in the woods, there came the great revelation. It came not in any form of words, but rather in a wordless and formless wonder, too vast for the limitation of thought. I fell upon the ground and must have lost consciousness, for after a while, how long a time I do not know, I awoke and got up and looked about me. Then gradually I remembered the experience which had been too big for me while I was feeling it. I could put into the form of words the realization which had been too much for my mortality to bear. And the words I used to myself were, "All that is God." It seemed very simple, yet it was far from simple. All that is God. That must include me and my fellow beings, human and animal. Even the trees and the birds and the rivers must be a part of God, if God were all that is. From the moment life assumed a new meaning for me, I could not see a human face without remembering the revelation that a human being any human being I saw was a part of God. When my dog looked at me, I said to him aloud, "You are part of God." When I stood beside a river and listened to the sound of its waters, I said to myself, "I am listening to the voice of God." When a fellow was being angry with me, I asked myself, "In what way have I offended God?" When one lovingly spoke to me, I said, "God is loving me now," and the realization nearly took my breath away. Life became unbelievably beautiful. Theretofore I had been so absorbed in God and trying to find God that I had not given much thought to my fellow beings and had even neglected those nearest me. But from that day I began to mingle with my human brethren. I found that as more and more I sought God in them, more and more God responded to me through them. And life became still more wonderful. Sometimes I tried to tell others what I felt, but they did not always understand me. It was thus I began to realize that God had purposely, for some reason of his own, covered himself in veils. Was it that he might have the pleasure of tearing them away? If so, I would help him all I could. So I tried to make other men grasp the knowledge for God which I myself had attained. For years I taught men. At first I wanted to teach everybody, but I soon came to see that that was impossible. And so I soon selected a few disciples, people who called themselves my disciples. They did not always tell the world that they were my disciples because I asked them not to do so. But I urged each of them to give to someone as much as possible of the knowledge I had given to him. And so I think that many have come to feel a little of the wonder which was revealed to me that day alone in the woods, when I awoke to the knowledge that God is. God is. Then the saint turned and left me, with all my questions unanswered. I wanted to ask him when and how he had left the earth, and what work he was doing out here, but he was gone. Perhaps I shall see him again some day, but whether I do or not, he has given me something which I in turn give to you, and he as he himself desired to give it to the world. Interesting comparison there from books 100 years apart. The Eric Medhouse channeled book, channeled by a living medium here on Earth, reflecting a lot of the common understandings and phrases of the New Age community. And the one 100 years ago saying much the same thing long before the New Age movement had started, although Theosophy and Spiritualism were well into gear by 1914, that's for sure. But you see the great chain of being, the great stream of understanding that transcends religious dogma. It's always been there, right back to ancient Egypt. And Egypt got it from Atlantis, the ones that got in the boats and sailed away before the final collapse. And from Egypt it went to Greece, and from Greece it went into various secret societies as the Christian/Catholic Church gained prominence and repressive control. It all went underground. The underground stream of esoteric understanding that tells the human being that they are divine, that they're not sinful, that all is divinity, and that they are a little part of it. Unlike the church, who would have you believe you were sinful and hopeless and had to beg and work for your salvation. Of course, that was all wrong. There is no sinning and there is no salvation. It's all nonsense. It's all experience. It's all life accumulating in your soul as a data bank of information that will soon be filled, and you will then graduate from this planet. Whether that's 10 years or 200 years, it doesn't matter. You will graduate. And shucking off that religious dogma is just one more step in the crawl towards graduation and the elimination of outmoded and useless belief systems that hold you back from understanding your own divinity and eternal being. He said, feeling much inspired. And so, I think that's all for today. We'll get a little more Eric Medhus, I think, and maybe a little more of, there's plenty more to read from. I've got a couple of others lined up. It will be interesting reflections on other people's experience in the afterlife, because we all have different experiences depending on our expectations, assumptions, culture, drive, curiosity, bravery. Not everyone goes surfing on other planets like Eric did. A lot of people stick right to their little community, and that's fine for them. Look around you. People that stick to conventional lives and the comfort zone of their role in their small neighborhood and community and family, they're liable to be the same when they get to the astral plane. Whereas if you're more of an adventurous, always falling and breaking your knees and scratching yourself as you struggle through the tidal waves of challenges when you move out of the comfort zone, you will likely be a much more adventurous spirit when you get there. And that's not to say you're better. You're just different. There are mountain climbers and there are valley campers. Myself, I'm a bit of both. I'm a valley camper when I'm in the body, and when I'm out of body, I'm a mountain climber, to use those two phrases. And I'm sure you've got thoughts about what kind of soul you are yourself, or what kind of soul you are in this life. So, until we meet again, sooner than you think likely, I bid you a fond farewell.